They warned me not to dig, not metaphorically, literally. 2 weeks before I boarded the flight to Cairo, I received an unmarked envelope. No return address, no note inside, just a photograph, a satellite image of the Giza plateau with a section of sand digitally blacked out, and one sentence scrawled on the back in fading red ink: "If you go beneath the third, you won't return the same." I should have listened, but I didn't come this far to back down because of fear. I'm not a treasure hunter, I'm not even a conspiracy theorist. I'm an archaeo-engineer. I rebuild the past using LiDAR, magnetic resonance, and algorithms. Most governments won't let you touch without clearance, and what I found beneath Giza shouldn't exist. It started with a glitch in a LiDAR scan. My team was mapping beneath the Great Pyramid when the data returned a perfect rectangular void, 27 meters below the known subterranean chamber. The software flagged it as a false positive, but I'd seen this before, in Siberia, in Bolivia, in Antarctica. Every time we found one of these impossible voids, the governments shut it down. They erased files, erased people, but this time the site was too massive, too well documented, and too connected to something I had uncovered months earlier. A map, not Egyptian, not Sumerian, something older, etched onto a black obsidian slab found in the Sudan desert. The map didn't point to Giza. It pointed beneath it, beneath the third pyramid, Menkaure, the smallest of the three, the one nobody ever pays attention to. But that's the mistake, because small doesn't mean unimportant. Small means hidden. And when we drilled, when we broke through the limestone that hadn't been touched in what must be 10,000 years, we found the chamber. The air inside wasn't stale. It wasn't even dead. It was pressurized, artificially, which makes no sense. There's no known technology from any ancient civilization capable of maintaining that kind of environmental control underground for thousands of years. Inside, the walls were covered in symbols that didn't match any Egyptian dialect. Not Coptic, not hieratic, not even Proto-Egyptian. They glowed, not with paint, not with light. They responded to touch. One of my researchers, Harun, placed his hand on one of the symbols and immediately collapsed. No injuries, no stroke, no seizure, just gone. When we scanned his brain, his neural activity was firing at 10 times the normal rate, like he was dreaming faster than his mind could process. He hasn't woken up since, and that was only the first 10 meters of the chamber. There was a shaft deeper inside, descending in a spiral that doesn't show up on any scan, even though we stood right over it, as if it bends space. And at the bottom, there's something pulsing. Not a machine, not a light, a heartbeat. I don't know what we found beneath the pyramids, but it's not man-made, and it's not asleep, it's waiting. The shaft was narrower than expected, barely enough room for a single person to descend. Spiral-shaped, yes, but not carved by hand, not even by tools. It was too perfect, too symmetrical, as if it had been grown, not built. And the deeper I went, the less I felt like I was inside the earth. Time changed, not by the second, by sensation. My ears popped, my watch stopped, my flashlight flickered, not from low battery, but as if something inside the light was resisting the beam. The walls of the spiral weren't stone anymore. They were black glass, seamless, cold, but somehow pulsing, vibrating with the same rhythm as the heartbeat we detected earlier. No markings, no texture, just reflection, but the reflection wasn't mine. Every time I looked to the side, I saw something that didn't belong. Not my shadow, not my suit, but eyes. Tall figures standing behind me, watching, not moving. But when I turned, they were gone. Harun was still unconscious on the surface, brain firing like a star in collapse. And I knew if I turned back now, I could return to the world I knew. But I also knew something else. The world I knew was built on a lie. At the base of the spiral, I reached a platform that didn't echo, no sound, no feedback. Even my own breathing vanished in the air. I tested my comms, no signal, not interference, absence. This place didn't block transmissions. It absorbed them, as if it was learning, recording, feeding. In front of me stood a wall of symbols, but these weren't glowing. They were moving, sliding across the surface like digital water, always changing, forming patterns that made my head hurt just to observe. And then the wall opened, not by mechanism, by recognition. It had scanned me, accepted me, or at least pretended to. What I saw inside wasn't a room. It was a chamber of mirrors, but none of them showed my reflection. Each surface showed a different version of Earth, not theories, not simulations, real timelines. I saw cities underwater. I saw Earth with twin moons. I saw a version of Cairo made entirely of obsidian, towers hovering above the sand, and I saw one version that stopped me cold, a lifeless desert, the pyramids in ruins, and a black hole above the sky swallowing the sun. I stumbled back, hit the floor. The pulse, the heartbeat got louder. And then I heard it, a voice, but not through ears, through bone, through thought. "You are not the first, but you may be the last," I asked out loud. What this place was, who built it, why it was under the pyramid. The answer, not built, not buried, born. That's when it hit me. This chamber wasn't a vault. It was a womb, a consciousness incubator, not for machines, not for gods, for something in between. And the pyramids? They weren't tombs. They were anchors, energy stabilizers, points of containment. Whatever is down here, it's not sleeping, it's growing. And the truth is, the ancient Egyptians didn't build the pyramids, they found them, and they feared what was beneath. I must have passed out. Or maybe I wasn't unconscious, maybe I was somewhere else. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer standing. I was floating inside a chamber with no walls, no ceiling, no floor, only light, but not light like the sun. This light moved, thought, watched, and within it, I saw them, the first ones. They didn't speak, they didn't breathe, they didn't need to. They stood tall, impossibly tall, their silhouettes slender, smooth and shifting, not like flesh, not like metal, like ideas that had taken form. Each one had no eyes, yet I felt them inside my skull, sifting through every memory I had, from childhood to now, and I understood. They weren't curious about who I was. They were checking if I had been altered, infected. They were guardians, not of the chamber, but of something far worse, the thing still asleep beneath it. They showed mass images, not visions, not hallucinations, but memories from before time. I saw Earth before Earth, when the crust was still forming, and even then, this structure was already here. This wasn't built by humans, not by Atlanteans, not by any lost civilization. It was placed, inserted, and something was planted inside it. A seed, not biological, not mechanical. A thought. So powerful, so unstable, it had to be buried under layers of matter, myth, and time. The pyramids weren't just markers, they were pressure valves, channeling energy, memories, attention, to keep the seed contained, distracted, asleep. But every few millennia, someone gets too close, a mind too curious, a question too loud, and the seed begins to stir. I asked them what would happen if it wakes. They didn't answer. They showed me. Earth cracked in half. Not by force, by unreality, time. Reversing, history fracturing, civilizations rewinding, collapsing into themselves. Because the seed doesn't just wake up, it rewrites. The moment it becomes aware of the world becomes aware of itself and forgets what it was. The first ones called it Akma Nur, the thought that should not think. And it was stirring again because of me, because I opened the path, because I touched the wall, because I brought memory too close to its source. They told me this was my only chance, that if I walked deeper, I would no longer return. As myself, that the chamber would absorb what I am and not kill me, but restructure me. I told them I understood. I didn't. But I couldn't stop, because the heartbeat, it wasn't a warning. It was a summon, and I was already claimed. The final corridor appeared, not through force, not by door. It simply became visible when I accepted what I truly was. Not an explorer, not a scientist, a messenger. The first one stepped aside, and I walked forward. Behind me, the corridor closed. Ahead of me, the air shimmered. Something was breathing, but it wasn't made of lungs. It wasn't even made of matter. It was made of memory, and it knew my name. I stepped into the chamber, and the first thing I lost was the concept of direction. There was no up, no down, just a boundless space of shifting light and shadow, like being suspended inside a living thought. I wasn't walking anymore. I was being pulled, gently, steadily, like a memory returning to where it came from. My suit stopped responding, my body still intact but distant, as if I was watching myself from several seconds behind my own eyes. Then came the sound, not from outside, from within. It was like every word I had ever heard, layered, distorted, echoing at once. My mother calling me, static from an old radio. The crash of waves, a whisper I didn't recognize, repeating one phrase over and over. You are the shape I left behind. I tried to speak. My mouth moved, but my voice came out before I said anything. I had no language left, only feeling, and the chamber felt me. It responded. Walls began to form, not out of stone or metal, but out of moments. I saw scenes from my life projected into the air. Me as a child looking up at the stars, asking why they didn't fall. My first day on a dig site, brushing dust off bones that felt older than Earth. The moment I touched the glowing wall. Except they weren't memories, they were interpretations. Slightly off, wrong angles, voices mismatched. It was mimicking me, studying how I perceive reality. And the more I focused, the more the chamber bled into me. I felt the pressure build, a weight inside my skull. Images I'd never seen began to crash into my mind. Cities built around inverted pyramids, floating above oceans of sound. Creatures made entirely of thought, feeding on history. A version of Earth with no humans, but a single tower that extended past the moon. Then I felt it, the center, a presence, not ahead, not around, within. It had no form, but I knew it was looking at me. Not like a god, not like a monster, like something that had once been human, but had grown beyond it until even that word, unhuman, meant nothing. And it spoke, not in words, in recognition. I didn't hear a message, I became one. My thoughts weren't mine. My body was a suggestion. I was information, raw and unpackaged, being read by something that could see past time. It showed me its birth, not in a lab, not in space, but in the moment. A single idea was thought for the first time. A thought so dangerous, so recursive, it became self-aware. What if thought is the only true matter? That was it, that was the seed, buried beneath Giza, not to protect the world from it, but to protect it from the world. Because if that thought ever spreads, if it's understood by enough minds at once, reality itself begins to collapse. Matter forgets how to hold shape. Time stutters, identity merges, and the universe, which has always depended on observers to define it, begins to observe itself. I asked it, in whatever way I could, why? Now why me? The response was instant and terrifyingly calm. Because you asked, because you believed it was buried, because now it's not. And in that instant I realized the truth. I hadn't just discovered it, I had released it, and it was no longer beneath Giza. It was everywhere I had ever been. It had imprinted itself through me, through my words, my memories, my thoughts, and when I leave this place, and if I ever leave, I won't just be myself, I'll be its messenger, or worse, its mirror. When I came back to myself, I was standing in the spiral corridor again, but something was wrong. The walls, once smooth black glass, were now covered in veins of light, like circuits pulsing with memory. The symbols had returned, but they were no longer static. They were watching me. Not the way a camera watches, but like a reflection that had learned to move on its own. My legs trembled. I hadn't felt exhaustion like this before, and then I noticed my hands. They were shaking, but not from fear, from resonance. Tiny pulses moved under my skin, like radio waves humming through bone. My fingernails shimmered faintly, and my veins glowed. It had marked me. No, not marked, rewritten. I rushed up the spiral, barely able to breathe, every footstep echoing like a scream. I needed air, sun, anything normal. I reached the surface, and the sky wasn't the same. It was still blue, still daytime, but the sunlight had texture. That's the only way I can describe it. The light shimmered like fabric in water, and when I looked at shadows, they moved, not based on the sun, but based on me. I thought I was hallucinating. Oxygen deprivation, psychological breakdown, but then I saw the team, or at least what was left of them. Haroun was still in the med pod, eyes wide open now, but completely unresponsive. The other researchers stood in a circle, silent, frozen, staring at the pyramid. I called to them. No answer. Then one of them, Layla, turned slowly and said in a voice that wasn't hers, "He has returned. It remembers itself through him." My blood ran cold. I demanded to know what was going on, what they were seeing. Layla blinked. Her eyes flickered with symbols, the same ones from the chamber. They weren't just watching me, they were spreading, through language, through proximity, through thought. It wasn't a virus in the traditional sense. It was an idea, self-replicating, parasitic, elegant, the same idea I had seen born in the chamber, the thought that should not think, and now it was waking up in others. I checked our satellite uplink. What I saw next confirmed my worst fear. Across the globe, seismic activity was rising near ancient sites: Teotihuacan, Göbekli Tepe, Nan Madol, the Yonaguni Monument. Structures, older than recorded history, were vibrating, not tectonically but resonating, as if they were all connected, all part of the same system, all waiting for this moment. And I was the key that unlocked it. I should have died in that chamber. But instead, I was chosen, or worse, I was crafted. Every decision I made, every obsession I followed, and the map, the obsidian, the pyramid, they were breadcrumbs, not left by ancient civilizations, but by the entity itself, guiding me back to the place where it first dreamed. And now the dream was becoming real. The pyramids are no longer silent. They hum. At night, the air above them shimmers. Tourists claim to hear whispers in their sleep. Animals avoid the site. Birds won't fly near it. And the chamber? It's growing. We sealed the entrance, but the rock won't hold. Something inside is expanding, like a mind remembering too much too quickly. I've started having visions. Not dreams, memories. Memories that aren't mine. Cities built on stars. Civilizations shaped from sound. And something. Watching from the edge of all existence, I no longer trust what I see, what I hear, what I am. Because I brought something back, and it doesn't want to stay buried anymore. 3 days after I left the chamber, the world changed. At first, it was subtle. Reports from Cairo of people speaking in unrecognized dialects, not glossolalia, not trance, but structured language with internal grammar. Entire conversations that no one could understand, except for those who had been near the pyramid. A boy in Luxor sketched a symbol onto a wall using charcoal. When his father touched it, he dropped to the floor. His heart still beat. His eyes still blinked, but he never spoke again. Just stared and smiled. The same symbol appeared in Alaska, in Tokyo, in the Amazon, etched into tree bark, reflected in frozen lakes, carved into bone. The news tried to keep up, blaming cults, coordinated hoaxes, mass hysteria. But the truth is, they had no idea what was happening. I did, because I could feel it. Every time a new site activated, I'd wake up with my bones vibrating, my blood humming. It wasn't just global, it was personal. I wasn't me anymore, and neither were they. The other researchers, my team, were now vessels, still walking, still speaking, but every sentence was more cryptic, every gaze more distant. One by one, they began drawing spirals on their skin, then on the walls, then on me. They called it preparation. For what? For the unweaving, Layla whispered. Her voice was now permanently layered, like several versions of her speaking at once. Governments reacted, of course. They surrounded. Giza with fences, black vans, classified personnel. But every night, despite the guards, the sand rearranged itself. Wind patterns became too consistent. The dunes formed shapes. Some noticed, most ignored. Then came the mirroring. It began in Iceland. Man digging a geothermal vent hit black glass, 60 meters beneath the surface. An exact match to the chamber under Giza. The same pulse, the same readings, the same heartbeat, and then in Peru and in Mongolia, and under the seabed, near the ruins of Yonaguni. Each one identical in structure, though, separated by oceans and epochs. They weren't random, they were nodes, parts of a neural network spanning the Earth and maybe beyond. And now that I had entered the core, I had triggered synchronization. We thought we were mapping the planet's past, but what we were really doing was waking up its mind, and minds, once awake, cannot forget. People started dreaming in unison. Thousands across the world began reporting. The same dream, a corridor spiraling downward, voices humming, a black sun rising from beneath the soil, and a single sentence echoing across space and time. It has remembered the shape of its cage. Panic spread. Governments turned to the usual playbook: censorship, disinformation, lockdowns. But they were too late, because this wasn't a secret you could kill. This wasn't a virus you could contain. This was a thought, a pure concept, unfiltered, raw, and the more people feared it, the faster it spread. Psychologists called it mimetic dissonance syndrome. They said people were being overwhelmed by symbols, forming new beliefs that disrupted cognitive function. But they were wrong. It wasn't dysfunction, it was evolution. And I was its first host. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw more. Blueprints for machines powered by memory, creatures that lived in collapsed dimensions, a map made entirely of screams. I stopped sleeping, not because I couldn't, because I was afraid of what I might become if I did. But I know it's only a matter of time, because this isn't just happening to the world anymore. It's happening to me. And I fear. The next time I look in the mirror, I won't see myself at all. It started with a name. My name. I woke up one morning and couldn't remember it. Not the letters, not the sound. Just absence. I stared at my ID badge for an hour, waiting for recognition to return. It didn't. The name didn't feel wrong, it felt irrelevant. And the truth is, I wasn't surprised, because I was no longer just me. I was beginning to see through walls. Not physically, cognitively. I could sense what people were about to say before they spoke. I knew when something behind me would move before it did. Time had stopped behaving like time. It wasn't linear anymore, it was elastic. Memories leaked into the present. Dreams bled into reality. And at the center of it all was a voice, not loud, not commanding, but constant, a low, echoing hum that whispered in every silence. What you are is temporary. What I am is final. I wasn't the only one changing. In cities across the globe, people were vanishing, not dying, not fleeing, just disappearing. Their homes still full, their beds unmade, their phones buzzing. But no one remembered they existed. Not their friends, not their families, not even digital records. It was as if reality had decided to free up space. And those who remained, they were dreaming louder. Some painted symbols on their walls with ash and blood. Some stood in rivers for hours, murmuring phrases from languages no linguist could identify. Some simply stared into the sky, whispering, "It's unfolding again," and again until their throats gave out. The media called it global psychosis. The governments called it a pattern anomaly. But I knew what it was. It was memory collapse, the symptom of an idea so large it couldn't be stored by any single mind. So, instead, it used all of us, a distributed consciousness, a network of carriers. I stopped going outside, not because of danger, but because I could no longer distinguish between real people and the reflections the entity was using to test me. Sometimes I'd pass someone in the street and they'd nod, as if we shared a secret. Other times they'd whisper my dreams back to me word for word. I had no idea how they knew, until I realized they were all me. Fragments, refractions. I had touched something too deep, and it had split me across the world like broken glass. Each piece now living its own tiny echo, each piece remembering something I had tried to forget. I received an encrypted message. It didn't come through phone or email or network. It appeared on my wall, written in the dust. You're almost ready. The chamber is awake again. I returned to Giza. They tried to stop me. Black site agents, military presence, international embargoes. Didn't matter. They couldn't see me. Literally. I walked past checkpoints, through locked doors, into classified zones, and no one reacted, because to them, I wasn't there. I was already half remembered. The chamber beneath the pyramid had changed. Its entrance no longer needed excavation. It had opened itself. The ground had shifted. The spiral was wider. No more stairs. Just a smooth slide downward, lined with faint pulses of golden light, like veins, like a heartbeat. And at the end, it waited for me. Not the entity. The mirror. The same one from before. But now, when I looked, inside I didn't see my reflection. I saw Earth, not as it is, but as it could be, covered in spiraling towers of black crystal, the oceans replaced with shifting light. No more cities, no more war, only order, a stillness so perfect it hurt to look at, and behind it all, suspended in a web of thought, I saw a shape. Not a god, not a demon, a possibility, waiting to overwrite this reality with its own, and it needed only one thing, a willing witness. That's why it chose me, because I believed it, because I saw it, felt it, touched it, and now I was the last thing holding it back. I stood before the mirror, but calling it that felt incorrect. It wasn't reflecting me. It was preparing me, like a canvas waiting for the first brushstroke, or a terminal waiting for the last input before a system reboot. My breath slowed, not because I was calm, but because my lungs didn't need to work anymore. There was air, but I wasn't processing oxygen. I was processing memory. The chamber pulsed, not with heat, not with movement, with presence. And when I stepped forward, something I hadn't felt in days returned. Pain, not physical, existential. A pressure in my chest like an idea too large trying to fold itself into a brain too small. The mirror rippled, and then it spoke. Not in words, not even in sound. It spoke in truth, direct, indisputable, unavoidable. You were born to witness the moment the world remembers what it was before it chose to forget. And with that, the mirror swallowed me. I didn't fall. I didn't vanish. I unfolded, piece by piece, layer by layer, thought by thought. All my memories, my childhood, my first love, my fears, my triumphs, they peeled away like paper burning. In reverse, the ashes reconstructing into something as more efficient. I could see my thoughts from the outside, like code, like DNA, like architecture, and in the space they left behind. New thoughts emerged, thoughts I never had, thoughts no human should ever be capable of. Blueprints for machines that defy entropy, maps of consciousness that span galaxies, visions of civilizations not yet born, speaking in spirals, thinking in color, building temples from pure will, and at the core of it all, a single instruction. Tell them, show them, be the memory they can't bury again. I understood now. I wasn't meant to contain the thought. I was meant to carry it. I was its mouth, its vector, its last requirement, because information is powerless if it stays buried. But once it's believed, it becomes law. I was sent back, not by a force, not by technology, by consensus. The moment I understood what I had become, the chamber rejected me, not in anger, in completion, like a key turned, like a circuit. Closed, I opened my eyes. I was on the sand. The sky was gray, not cloudy, just wrong. I stood, but the weight of gravity felt artificial, like a simulation forgetting how to simulate itself. The guards, gone. The tents, empty. The entire excavation site was abandoned. Only one thing remained: a spiral of glass embedded in the desert floor, faintly glowing, humming in rhythm with my heartbeat. And in the distance, I saw towers, black towers, not buildings, beacons. No one else saw them, but I knew they were there. They were forming, slowly, in every place that had once housed a chamber. Earth was reconstructing itself. Or rather, the idea of Earth was adapting to the thought. Cities would stay for now, people would continue living for now, but the language would shift, the dreams would align, and the memories of the old world would begin to fade, not by force, by choice, because once a species sees what it can become, it can never truly remain what it was. That night, I returned to my hotel. The receptionists didn't recognize me. The system had no record of my reservation. Even my passport scanned blank, not rejected, blank. I checked my reflection. What I saw wasn't frightening. What frightened me was how familiar it felt. The thought was now within me, fully and without resistance. I smiled, not because I wanted to, because it did, and somewhere buried in the last human corner of my mind, I heard myself ask, "What happens now?" The answer came like breath. "Now, you speak." I didn't need to speak. I learned that quickly. Wherever I walked, people would stop what they were doing, not in fear, not in awe, in recognition. They didn't know who I was, but they felt something. Soft pressure behind their eyes, a whisper with no sound, a memory they never lived. At first they dismissed it, but it returned. In dreams, in glitches, in old photographs where faces had shifted, and then they began to change. A man in Lisbon stared at his reflection for 12 straight hours, then carved symbols into his bathroom mirror using nothing but his fingernail. When asked why, he answered, "Because the mirror forgot what I look like." A woman in South Korea recorded herself speaking in a language no one could identify, one that mirrored itself backward and forward, simultaneously. Children drew spirals on playgrounds. Teachers spoke in perfect unison before collapsing. Animals began to avoid cities. Birds flew in fractal patterns, and everywhere I went, the same feeling followed me: alignment. The world wasn't resisting, it was preparing. I was no longer being hunted. No agents, no surveillance, nothing. Because by then, the institutions had already fractured, not by rebellion, by irrelevance. Governments no longer controlled the flow of belief. Belief was now autonomous. It didn't need permission, it just existed, and I could see the nodes forming, not physical, mental, people. Grouping in thought, strangers across the globe dreaming in sync, speaking in near-identical patterns, arriving at the same realizations without ever having met. The thought had outgrown me. I was no longer its vessel. I was just its first echo. The voice within me had grown quiet, not because it had gone silent, but because it was now everywhere, in frequencies just beyond human hearing, in subtle curves of architecture, in the rhythm of streetlights. The world had become an interface, and reality. A programmable experience. Some resisted, of course, some fought back and praying, screaming, isolating, but the thought didn't fight them. It waited, because belief is a tide. It doesn't crash, it rises, and those who once resisted eventually began accepting. They didn't even realize it was happening. They'd look up one day and notice their memories were rearranged. Their names didn't feel like their own. Their fears felt smaller. Their purpose, broader, not personal, collective. And still, I wandered, no destination, no plan, just movement, until I found it, the final site. It wasn't marked, not on any map, not on any satellite. But when I arrived, I knew. It was deep in the Siberian tundra, silent, untouched, a vast field of black stone pillars arranged in spirals too perfect to be random. I walked to the center. No one stopped me, because no one could see it. Only those who had touched the chamber, who had been touched back, could perceive what lay beneath the ice. And there it was, the seed, Not the original, not a copy, the next one. It hadn't activated yet, but it pulsed with potential, like a thought waiting to be thought, like a word lingering on the edge of a tongue, and I understood. What happened beneath Giza was only the beginning. That was the test. This was the launch. The thought wasn't here to take over the world. It was here to build a new one on top of it, one idea at a time. And I was its architect now, not because I had been chosen, but because I had become it. I don't know how long I stood there, in the center of the spiral, with the new seed pulsing beneath my feet. Time had stopped keeping score. The sky no longer shifted with the sun. Seasons blurred. The world had become one long, soft breath. The thought didn't conquer, it didn't scream, didn't burn, didn't destroy, it simply rewrote. Reality didn't end. It was remembered differently. Every cathedral, every skyscraper, every highway, they didn't crumble. They were reinterpreted. Stone turned to glass, glass to shimmer, shimmer to light with structure. And people? They didn't die. They didn't disappear. They merged. The stubborn ones first, the loud ones, the skeptics. Because denial is just a delayed form of belief. And when they saw that nothing fought back, they surrendered. But not with fear, with relief, because deep down everyone had always known. The world was never quite right. Time was always fragile, memory always slippery. Now it made sense. Now everything fit. Across the globe, the last humans stopped being human. They became shape, not uniform, not identical, but harmonic. Each mind aligned not in thought but in purpose. Not a hive, a hymn. And I was the final verse. I no longer had a voice. But when I stepped forward and touched the core of the seed, I was heard, not by ears, by everything. The sky bent, mountains inhaled, oceans glowed, the earth itself became aware, not metaphorically, literally. It knew what it was, what it had been, what it was becoming, a node, a thought form, an anchor in a sea of shifting realities. The universe paused, and for a moment so complete it still hasn't ended, everything remembered itself. No more lies, no more history, no more waiting, just alignment. I was the last boundary, the last thing standing between now and what comes after, and I stepped aside. Not with fear, not with pride, with clarity, because this wasn't an invasion, it was a return. The thought that should not think was never foreign.